What's up, guys, in BC Film Reviews and more, and I'm wearing the same shirt because I'm filming on the same day as the WandaVision review, but whatever, they'll be released at separate times. I'm here to review A Quiet Place Part 2, directed by John Krasinski, starring Emily Blunt, Noah Jupe, and Millicent Simmons, and, I already said and, but there's like a couple more ands, Cillian Murphy, or Killian Murphy, and Jimon Hansu, I believe is how you pronounce that. So, Quiet Place Part 2. Was it as good as the original? Not quite, but is it a great movie on its own? Yes, this is a great movie, a great thriller, lot of very suspenseful scenes that will leave you on the edge of your seat, biting your nails, your jaw will drop multiple times. It is a fantastic theater experience. If it is safe where you are, please go to see this movie. It is so much fun. It is such a fantastic experience. Your jaw will be on the floor. Your hands will be gripping the seats. It's just fantastic. On that level, it is a very fun movie for anyone who loves horror, thrillers, monster movies, any of that stuff. This movie is excellent. On a story level, it's okay. That's where it falters from the first one a little bit. I think the first one had a stronger core to it. It felt a little more human, a little more emotional, whereas Quiet Place Part 2 is a little more cookie cutter in a few ways. Quiet Place 1 subverted a lot of things, whereas Quiet Place 2 fell into things that the first one tried to subvert, which was a little disappointing because the first one, when it came out, was so fresh. And this one does feel like it's kind of more just fitting into the mold. It's doing that very well, but it isn't quite as unique as the first one when that one first came out. But then we got a bunch of imitators of the first one. This is way better than, say, Bird Box. I mean, this movie is great, whereas Bird Box is awful. So it's definitely not a rip-off of A Quiet Place, but at the same time, it can fall under some trappings that I was hoping it wouldn't, but it did, and I was a little disappointed by that. But what it does do well, it does very well. The directing is fantastic. John Krasinski is so assured behind the camera this time. He knows what he's doing, and I cannot wait to see him direct more movies, whether they're Quiet Place sequels or something completely different, and I hope he does whatever he wants to do because he's great at what he's doing right now. Emily Blunt is great in her role. She doesn't have quite as much to do in this one as she did in the first one. I think it's probably scheduling conflicts because she's also doing that Jungle Cruise movie, which is a big blockbuster thing. So her character doesn't really go through many changes. It's basically just continuing on from where the last one left off. This whole movie feels like an extension rather than a true successor. It's like a DLC for a video game, but a really good DLC, but it's still not like a full game on its own, if that makes any sense. The characters are still very good, though. The acting is fantastic. Millicent Simmons gets to come into her own a lot more here, which I greatly appreciated. I thought she was a great part of the first one, and they made her even better here. One, she's just gotten better with age in terms of acting. She's a little older now. But her character also goes through a lot of changes from the first one to this one, and also in this one. I think out of all the characters, hers is the most complex, interesting, and the one most worthy of praise. Her character definitely has to grow up a lot and get a lot done, and it's very cool to see her arc, I guess, her shift into kind of a badass. And it was really fun to see her come into that role, especially because that means a lot for the deaf community, and they don't ever treat it as a disability. Honestly, they treat it as a strength of hers. Sure, it's had some negative impacts, but it's also had a lot of positive, which I think is a great thing to show that even things we consider disabilities can actually be useful in certain situations. I know this is a very stylized, hypothetical world. Okay, so what if there's this world full of monsters and, well, the deaf girl finds that she can blow them up because of her hearing aid? Like, yeah, I understand that's a little silly, but it's still cool to see someone that we don't get a lot of representation in the screen get basically full coverage for the entire movie. She is the driving force of this film, and she does an excellent job, and it was just great to see that. I really need to take ASL courses. I did when I was younger, but I've kind of faltered from it, so I really need to get back to that. But anyway, yeah, she will inspire people. She inspired me, so that's fantastic. Noah Jupe is also really good as the younger brother, I guess. He doesn't have the biggest role, but he definitely also has to grow up like she does. And so it's just interesting to see these children learn from their elders and have to grow up and take charge a little bit. And then we have a newcomer, Cillian Murphy. Two newcomers, really, but Cillian Murphy's the one that has the most spotlight in this movie. He does a great job in the role, but the role itself is wasn't particularly interesting to me. This is another place where it kind of just falls under other survival movie trappings, where it's like, okay, we have a guy who's weary of the world and he lost some people and now he's just kind of mad at everything. Like, I understand that's probably how a lot of people would be, but it's still a character we've seen multiple times, so it's a little stock, I guess. Cillian Murphy does a fantastic job. It's not his fault, it's just the writing was a little weak on him. He does have some really well acted parts, though. There are some fantastic scenes with him that I thought were quite beautiful. Him and Millicent Simmons kind of go on this little side journey together, and it was really cool. And yeah, he was great. It just, sometimes it felt like he was a little bit of a replacement for John Krasinski, because in the first one, John Krasinski, he's a white guy with a beard, and now Cillian Murphy is a white guy with a beard. So I wish they would have been a little more unique with the casting, but I still understand. He still does a great job, and he plays a good part. It's just not as interesting as I would have liked it to have been. And that's kind of this whole movie. It's a great movie, and I still will give it a very positive score, but it just wasn't quite at the same level as the first one. Anyway, Quiet Place 2. Go see it. It's great. Fantastic thriller. Does some amazing things with some amazing sequences. And it was just so much fun. On a character and story level, it's a little weak. It's not quite as good as the first one. But I never really expected it to be. So I'm not necessarily mad at that. I just have to point it out because I am a critic and I have to point out every flaw along with every positive. I think the positive far outweighs the negative. This is a fantastic experience. Such a fun movie, and one that I think everyone will like that sees it if they're into these genre. I think it's a pretty worthy successor and a great extension of this world. It's really well directed, and there's a lot of things that are explored that we haven't gotten to see from this world that I think were really interesting. Maybe not the most original sequel, but it was definitely a great extension on this world. I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. Whereas the first one I give a 9 out of 10, because that movie just felt so fresh when it came out, and it still works today. This one is also great, but not quite as good. So that's why it's a point lower. But still, go see this. Just because I gave it a point lower doesn't mean it's not great on its own. 8 out of 10 is nothing to scoff at. This is a great experience. Go see this movie. It's so much fun and so thrilling. And you'll have a great time. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And comment down below what you thought of A Quiet Place Part 2. Did you like it, hate it, in between, whatever? Have you even seen it yet? I don't know. Some theaters are not open right now. Are you just waiting for the Paramount Plus release or to pirate it or whatever you guys do? I pirate a lot of movies, but this was one I actually did want to see in theater, so I did. Don't come to me, FBI. I will probably not do anything because I'm too scared of you. But anyway, thanks once again. Goodbye.